Threatened species recovery plans. Are they facing extinction as well? First, some background. The federal election result of May 2022 mirrored the opinion polls which had shown a swing in preference away from the incumbent Liberal coalition government over the previous 8 or 9 months. Australia had suffered through years of drought and unprecedented bushfires, with devastating loss of wildlife adding to an already rising rate of extinctions. Then came catastrophic floods and the COVID-19 pandemic. Environmental issues were becoming a major concern and climate change was now finally on the agenda. Despite the coalition government delaying the release of the latest IPCC report on global climate change, the general public could already see that urgent action was needed. The public had lost faith in the government and demanded change. There were words of advice for the government. The Guardian press had been publishing damning articles for several years condemning the decades of broken climate politics, with articles criticising years of inaction and failing recovery plans, calling them fantasy documents. 1 month after the election, World Wildlife Fund Australia published their blueprint to regenerate Australia, outlining the policy priorities for the new incoming government. So what are these recovery plans they refer to? They are a government-funded conservation strategy, developed and implemented under the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act of 1999. Under the Act, a fundamental requirement was that all threatened species should have a recovery plan. The objective is to stop the decline and support recovery of threatened species and ecological communities throughout Australia. Drafted by scientific panels using available data and knowledge, the plans are adopted after a consultation and ministerial review process. From 2006 onwards, the decision whether to develop a recovery plan has been decided by the Minister for Environment and Water after consultation from the Threatened Species Committee. Once approved, recovery plans are adopted and remain in force for up to 10 years until their legislated sunsetting date lapses or the species is removed from the threatened list. They are binding on the Australian government, and once in place, government agencies must act in accordance with the plans. Sadly, despite there now being over 1,900 species in Australia listed under the EPBC Act, less than 40% of these have a recovery plan. A point that the Guardian press were at pains to point out when they highlighted 172 listed species that were still waiting on approval of plans as of the end of 2020. But now there are changes in the process. In October 2022, the Labor government released a new Threatened Species Action Plan, replacing the one-year-old plan of the former government. As part of this new strategy, 372 recovery plans covering 575 species and ecosystems will lapse by the end of 2023. This represents 89% of all active recovery plans. In addition to this, it has been decided that 185 threatened species and ecological communities will no longer require a recovery plan. The new 10-year strategy for conservation planning is currently to focus on 110 priority species and 20 priority places. Species like Carnaby's cockatoo, eastern curlew, the numbat and the quokka. Places such as Fitzgerald River and the Stirling Ranges National Park, Blue Mountains, Kakadu, Western Woodlands and the McDonald Ranges. So are these recovery plans effective? This is a topic of much discussion within the scientific community. The intent of the plans is simple, but the development, implementation and funding of them has been a challenge. Despite this, there is plenty of evidence of success through adherence to recovery plans, with breeding programs and translocation projects producing good results. The key has been persistence and funding. So should we continue to utilise recovery plans? Well, as it's often said, proper planning prevents poor performance. This has been the fundamental takeaway message from human endeavours for millennia. Inspirational, influential and successful people throughout history have always advocated planning. Cicero, the Roman philosopher, stated, "Before beginning, plan carefully." Benjamin Franklin is quoted as saying, "By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail." So what is our final recommendation? Recovery plans may not have been perfect, but that doesn't mean we should stop trying to improve on them. or worse, drop them altogether. As Rachel Lowry, CEO of WWF Australia, wrote, costed and time-bound recovery plans are essential for all threatened species. And as Margaret Thatcher advocated, plan your work for today and every day, then work your plan. I am confident that what we need are well-constructed recovery plans that are fully funded and actioned in a unified and coordinated manner. And in the words of Confucius, if your plan is for 1 year, plant crops. If your plan is for 10 years, plant trees. If your plan is for 100 years, educate the people. Thanks for listening.